Richard Osmiston, thanks very much for coming along today. You are running for the Mayor candidacy in Nelson and a council position in the Tasman. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Good morning, Graham. Yeah, great to be here. Yeah. I actually run a farm at Lake Rotoiti, where we've been for 12 years, but my daughter's left school now and she's running the farm, which gives me more time to come down and get into trouble in town, really. Yeah, we spend quite a lot of time in town anyway, and I think there's a lot of this kind of work to be done, and now I've got the time to do it.
Great. And can you please tell us, why should people vote for you?
I see it's time, everybody's ready for a major change now, and just to continue with the same old fiddling kind of changes that we've seen in the past really isn't going to work in the future. You know, we can't carry on as our grandparents did, thinking that that's going to fix the problems that we've got now, and we really need some, I mean, I hate to use these ghastly expressions like blue sky thinking, but we need to be looking outside of our conventional boxes.
Hi, my name's Jenny, and my question to the council is, what are they going to do about recycling in Nelson? Because I see only 2 sets of recycling bins, one on Trafalgar Street and one down at the eyesight, and I'd like to see far more recycling bins because there's so many people now interested in recycling their recyclables. What else would we call them?
All right, yeah, it's a great question. I think that's on everybody's lips, Jenny. What can we do about recycling? And I don't want to go too far off on a tangent, Graham, but I'm associated with the New Zealand Money Free Party, and we're looking at a completely different way of doing business that doesn't involve profit and exploitation of other people and other resources. So from a resource-based economy perspective, which is what we're proposing ultimately, there will be much less consumption of things that need to be recycled, because we just won't be shopping in the same materialistic way that we have. In the short term, we've got much better facilities now to do recycling with. We've got much better manufacturing that gives materials that can be recycled, and I think the general will is there to do it. You know, in our parents' generation, there wasn't really the understanding that we needed to be recycling. So we're in a much better position to do it now. And I mean, I'd say it's coming. You know, we have to be patient, but this is coming. There is a natural will to do much better recycling.
Hi, look, I'm just really concerned about Nelson's ageing infrastructure, in particular how fresh water is delivered to households, residents, commercial enterprises, given that just recently another city council has had a huge issue with the delivery of fresh water to households, and another council taking water out of aquifers. I would like to know council's stance on taking fresh water without permission, and also the delivery of fresh water in our rusty pipes.
Yeah, another good question, Gail. What do we do about our excessive extraction of water and, of course, our ageing infrastructure? And it's so difficult for me to answer these questions in a purely localised, immediate, short-term context. But the real cause of us having any water issues at all is the money system itself, and the fact that there's profiteering around natural resources. Of course, the extraction issue comes from people trying to produce more from the land than it's naturally capable of. So we have irrigation, which ultimately drives the land harder than it was built to do, if you like, than nature intended. So we end up with some difficult issues. And of course, as we're finding around the world where fresh, clean water is difficult to access, people will now buy clean water. So people are tempted by monetary reasons to actually extract our water and sell it. So there is plenty of water out there, but not if you're trying to grow more and more alcohol to sell to the Chinese, or to grow more and more dairy to sell to the rest of the world, and thus effectively thrash the land too hard and cause some very serious problems, as we're now experiencing in Hawke's Bay. I think there was a nitrate exceedance a couple of weeks ago in the Waimea Plains, and of course Canterbury has horrific issues around water permeation, I think is the name of the word, where of course many of the bores are quite shallow, and what's happened on the surface is now permeating down to the water that we're extracting for drinking purposes. So it's a very serious issue, and I think it's going to change the face of New Zealand agriculture and industry, I mean, beyond recognition actually in quite the near future, as we realise we just can't go on driving the land harder and harder. With reference to the water delivery issue, the best way I can answer that is that we now have such amazing technology compared to what we had when we installed those water systems, that if you take the actual practical problem itself, the engineering and construction issue, it's really not that difficult to install new sewers, water mains, delivery systems, etc., with mole boring and underground remote technologies, that kind of thing. It's not difficult technologically. We're much better at doing that. Hydro, like water-powered digging machinery and things like that. So we have the physical and the technical and the resource capability to maintain and replace if necessary our water delivery infrastructure. What we lack is the money with which to do it, which is what I'm really about, but that's probably another question, Graham.
With only 52% of people voting in the local elections, what are you going to do to get people to vote, particularly younger people, so we can get some young blood into council, some new ideas?
This question.
Okay, yeah, good question, Brendan. You'd know that. You meet a lot of young people out there on the street. I mean, my question would be, why would they vote? To be perfectly honest, for the last, many years now, the apathy, the disillusionment is so strong now. Whoever you vote for, historically, it really isn't going to make much difference. What we're looking at is a transformation in society that is never going to be resolved just by putting in people with different colour shirts. It doesn't make any difference. So to actually get people to vote, I think we need to offer them something that actually means something, which is what this next generation is about.
Thanks, Richard. They were good questions from the people and fantastic answers. They were the points of view and issues from people on the street. How about some of your own points and issues that you'd like to raise in this election?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. I mean, I'm fighting this battle on two fronts now. I ran for Mayor of Nelson 3 years ago, purely on a money-free, promoting a resource-based economy front, saying that the money system itself is the root cause of all our problems, and I mean all our problems. And if we stop using money, we move to a resource-based economy, then we won't have any problems. We've cracked it all. However, I know that's a big ask. It seems very radical and very utopian, and we don't get to these things overnight. There's society as a whole, and especially councils, are very slow-moving sort of heavy machines that take a long time to change. And it's all about the timing, I think. And as Brendan referred to in the questions there, nobody's really voting anymore because they are utterly disillusioned with the choices that they've got. But when we look at a different sort of economic system that actually focuses on human well-being, technological capability, our resource and natural restrictions that we're now aware of, climate change, etc., we can see that there's a much, much better way of running society. As I said, I ran for mayor 3 years ago to bring this, to some public attention. I'm doing exactly the same again this time around, and it fell on very receptive ears. Furthermore, this time I'm running for Tasman District Council, as I think I'm in a position to win a council seat. I know we've got serious work to do today. These things don't change overnight. I'm a farmer, an aircraft engineer, a pilot, I'm a very practical-minded kind of person. I'm not just a dreamer, but I can see in the longer term we will have to make some major changes, and I think now's the time to start bringing them to fruition.
Great. Richard, thanks very much and good luck.
Thank you, Graham.
We're the team at JCar, right here in Nelson, 120 Hardy Street. Our shop is full of electronic items,
including security alarm systems, electronic components,
solar and power,
electronics, toys,
sound systems, cables, and much, much more. JCar.
120 Hardy Street, Nelson.
Nelson Tire Center. Great prices, great service. Buy your own Bryford trailer. All types, all sizes.
Hi, I'm Colin from Nelson Tire Centre. Come on down for a good deal.
Derek Shaw, thanks for coming on today. You're running as candidate in the elections coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Good morning, Graham. Yes, I grew up in Golden Bay, and my parents moved to Nelson when I was due to start secondary school, and I ended up being a first day pupil at Nayland College, which was kind of an unusual thing to happen. Very interesting saga. I then went off to university and spent a bit of time in Dunedin getting a degree, and then came back to Nelson, then I went away for Teachers College, and since that time I'd been back in Nelson, been actively involved in a whole lot of community groups and in local government.
Sure, and we see you running around all over the place too, I must say. And can you tell us please, why should people vote for you, Derek?
Well, I've now had 30 years experience in local government in Nelson, Tasman, top of the south. I was involved in the Catchment Board initially, and then Nelson City Council, and then I had a term, or just under a term, in the Nelson Marlborough Regional Council, so I'm the only one that I'm aware of that's had any regional council experience, so I have some knowledge of the regional functions that council's responsible. So I guess over that 30 years I think I've got a pretty good handle on some of the processes that there is in local government, reasonable knowledge of the various pieces of legislation that it works underneath. I've had a lot of experience in most areas of council, including chairing quite a number of committees and stuff, so I'm keen to offer my services again with that knowledge and experience if people want to vote for me again. As you perhaps recall, I missed by 40 votes last time round. I've had a few people who didn't vote for me last time saying they would this time, so I decided I'd give it another chance and see what happens.
Sure, and 40 votes is a slim margin, isn't it?
Slim, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Derek, we've got some questions from people on the street, and let's have a look at those and you can answer those for us.
Hi, my name's Jenny, and my question to the council is, what are they going to do about recycling in Nelson? Because I see only 2 sets of recycling bins, one on Trafalgar Street and one down at the eyesight, and I'd like to see far more recycling bins because there's so many people now interested in recycling their recyclables. What else would we call them?
That's a good question, Jenny, and I guess I've always taken the approach that it's a waste hierarchy, so there's a couple of things even before we get to the recycling. One of those is reducing the consumption of resources, and this is one of the issues that was in the Nelson 2060 strategy, try and reduce our consumption of things. There's also reuse comes before recycling, so I'd like to see across the board action on some of those. We've invested quite a lot of money in recycling facilities recently with the wheelie bins and other facilities, but I think we do need to look at some of the reuse element as well. And in some cases for recycling we do need to look at what we can do locally rather than kind of export it out to other places. So some of the difficulties I know through my involvement in the Nelson Environment Centre is that there's a problem with markets and how to process them. So sometimes that's a scale issue, sometimes it's just not having the necessary investment made by anybody, private enterprise or community groups or councils or central government in some of those things. So I think there's also a need for, at the central government level, there's a need for product stewardship, which is a concept that's been around for a long time. There's been numerous discussion papers at the national level, but nothing's ever really gained much traction. And so that concept would embrace that those who produce a lot of goods, and that includes packaging or whatever, also need to have responsibility for ensuring that at the end of their life they are actually reused or recycled in some way. And I think that's a key to increasing the amount of recycling that we could do in the end.
Hi, look, I'm just really concerned about Nelson's ageing infrastructure, in particular how fresh water is delivered to households, residents, commercial enterprises, given that just recently another city council has had a huge issue with the delivery of fresh water to households and another council taking water out of aquifers. I would like to know council's stance on taking fresh water without permission and also the delivery of fresh water in our rusty pipes. So
good question, Gail. There is an issue, I think, with water quality in our rivers and streams, and this council seems to embrace that as a issue. I've been involved in the Maitai Freshwater Management Unit, and that's trying to implement what the national policy statement is on that. So I've been involved in that, and I think there's a program that's developing to try and improve that. The question in terms of ageing infrastructure, yes, I'm well aware that there are a lot of old pipes, and when I was on council I did chair the infrastructure committee for a term, and there was a lot of work being done in replacement of ageing water pipes in particular to reduce our leakage and losses that we have. So I'm pretty aware that there's a good program now. I guess there's financial constraints on how quickly we can replace some of those ageing pipes, but there is an active program now backed up by a reasonable amount of money allocated to that area as well. In terms of water exports from Nelson, I don't see that as a big issue locally. It seems to be more of an issue for other parts of the country, although I understand we do export some through the port, but it's not relatively large, I don't think.
With only 52% of people voting in the local elections, what are you going to do to get people to vote, particularly younger people, so we can get some young blood into council, some new ideas?
Yeah, that's a big challenge. We have a lot of disengaged people, young people. My own children are pretty engaged, I guess, because they grew up in a household where civics was discussed, but I think that a lot more could be done in the senior levels at colleges, perhaps civics programs. I have in the past been invited in by various teachers to talk about what council does and processes, but generally my experience is that knowledge is pretty low, so I think there's a lot that could be done to engage the younger people and make council stuff relevant to them. We could build on the youth council, which has been going for quite a while now, and use those network of young people who are both at college and just left school to try and broaden that knowledge and I guess appreciation and the importance that it is for them to vote.
Great, Derek. Good. There were good points and issues from people on the street, great answers. How about some of your own points and issues that you'd like to raise for this election?
Well, I would take a very positive, practical approach to council. I think that's part of what I've been involved in the past. I'm very keen to see the Nelson 2060 strategy go to the next level of community engagement. There was a lot of engagement across the community on developing that strategy. There's a whole lot of work that needs to happen. Council working with community organisations and individuals who are interested in perhaps picking up some threads out of that strategy and doing some more work. I'm interested in, and one of those I guess was the Nelson Nature Program that Council this term has started. That dovetails very well with the community group that I'm heavily involved in, the Brook Waimara Sanctuary Trust. And it seems to me that it's attracted a huge amount of interest in bringing nature back into people's lives, the experiences that they may be able to have even in their backyards, just like people in Wellington now experience the spillover from Zealandia into their backyards and getting saddlebacks out in their trees and kowhai trees and tui, pigeons and so on. So I'm keen to see a lot of those things continue. The good program on the Maitai River is another one that I would be keen to see supportive. I'm keen on also just trying to make sure that we have good safe facilities for walking and cycling in Nelson as well. Across the whole spectrum, I think Nelson has huge potential to be a centre for cycling, not just for the locals but for visitors, and that requires a whole network of facilities, right from the easy Great Taste Trail facilities right through to, I guess, the more challenging mountain biking terrain that we have in our hills, where there's keen people working already on getting that network going. So I think we have a huge potential, and there's a major tourist attraction there in being a cycling centre.
Great, it would certainly be good to get people out and about and out of their cars more often. Derek, thanks very much for your thoughts and comments, and good luck for the election.
Thank you, Greg.
Cheers. Good people of Nelson. Funding for the Fringe Hill Gondola project was presented and debated at the Governance Committee on the 25th of August. It was a little unusual in that Council Officer Chris Ward, Group Manager Community Services, presented the case for the gondola, not someone from the Cycle Lift Society, nor did anyone from the society even bother turning up. Councillor Noonan had this to say.
Mr Ward, I'm just looking at the report, and I did expect more than a two-page I think you call it a brief perhaps, for $50,000. I just was looking for more information at this point in time.
And in summing up, Councillor Matheson raised his concerns.
I deliberately question these projects, and I think that is our role, to actually question. And in this particular case, I've just felt that we had a situation on our hands where our senior officer was sitting there by himself, feeling obviously very lonely, and but handled himself extremely well, I must admit, considering the type of questions that we were putting towards this project. I'll support it going through to full council, but I make a small request, and I don't think it's something out of the order, that when we do put it for discussion at full council, we at least have some physical support from the Lift Society here to hear the debate. even if the Mayor allows them public forum time, just to talk briefly about where they're coming from. That would be hugely welcome, I would think, to show that the project is more embraced than just having an officer speaking on their behalf.
Council is asking for people to turn up and support a project so Council can feel better about giving them $50,000, contrary to what Councillor Matheson says, seems out of order and unusual in the extreme. An appointed Councillor Murray had these very relevant concerns regarding cost, and with Council's track record of overruns and budget blowouts, it is one ratepayers should be worried about.
Look, I think it's clear Council was supporting this project. The annual plan has put $100,000 aside for this year for various projects. For mine in here, they've said, can we have the first $50,000, but they've changed the resolution because that was going to go towards a manager. They're now saying we're going to engage consultants. My concern remains the same. I hear the pre-commercial business case is going to be put up. My concern is that 50,000 isn't going to cut that. There's no evidence in here that we will be able to achieve that plan with the $50,000 that they're given, which I assume is what the Chief Executive and Mark's going to cover off. And I suppose I would be a little bit more comfortable if I had some indication from the supplier of that work that yes, they could do it within that budget. And then, so in the absence of that information, we're saying yes, Chief Executive and Mark, look after this for us. I'm also comfortable with that because they're quite capable of that. But I'd be concerned that 50 is not enough to get them to that point, and if it is 75 or 100 or 60 or whatever over that 50, how is that going to get funded? Because we do want to reach that point of here is a pre-commercial report. And that question isn't answered, how will that excess be funded?
The Nelson Mail has quoted that the gondola would be modelled on the Nevis Range gondola in Scotland, which is the 8th highest mountain in Britain. The gondola is used by both skiers and mountain bikers. In 2015, it had 141,000 users, whereas the Nelson Gondola, according to the April 2014 report by the Nelson Cycle Lift Society, used what they called extremely conservative visitor numbers of nearly 34,000 users per annum and less conservative numbers of just over 67,000 visitors per annum in their Model 2 analysts. The Nevis Range Gondola in Scotland is owned by the Nevis Range Development Company Limited and publishes accounts. For 2015, these show the company made a profit of £243,000 but received government grants of £350,000. It appears that the Nevis Gondola is very dependent on government grants to be viable, even with twice as many visitors as the Nelson Cycle Lift Society is projecting in its most optimistic forecast. Hopefully any feasibility study into the Fringe Hill Gondola will draw on the data available from the Nevis Gondola project. However, regardless of the councillors' concerns, $15,000 already being spent on a brief report, council administration taking the lead and concerns raised about it becoming a council-led project by default, no public consultation till the RMA process or when council ultimately votes on the project, which as many of us know from experience is often too late to be anything but a box-ticking exercise, the very real concern that $50,000 will not be anywhere near enough to produce a report that has any credibility and is most likely to say more report and studies need to be done. The committee voted unanimously to send it to full council meeting on the 8th of September to be given the go-ahead or not. Unfortunately, if you wish to be heard as a ratepayer, you will have to be available at 9 AM on the 8th of September, Thursday morning at council chambers, which is not convenient for most ratepayers in Nelson, I suspect. To further the transparency and make council more accessible to ratepayers, I lobbied for 3 years to have the video camera installed in council chambers, and to further help ratepayers have a real say in council decisions, if elected, I would lobby for a survey to be sent to all ratepayers with their quarterly rate demands, to gain general agreement or not of rates being spent on non-core functions, such as this one, and bringing some real democracy to our council decision-making process.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary Watson and I'm standing for the Tasman District Council's Mutri Waimea Award for Council. The TDC has some big challenges ahead and I believe it's important the Council have successful people with business skills and experience that know how to manage money, your hard-earned money, wisely. I want to see a considerable reduction in unnecessary red tape that is adding huge costs to all ratepayers, new home owners, businesses and farmers. Rate increases must be kept below inflation and more fairness introduced on a number of issues across our region. My wife Christine and I operate a number of companies including mainland TV, radio and online, and we've lived in the Motueka Valley for over 36 years. We love the people, we love the climate, we love the environment, and I am passionate to make Tasman better the way you want it.
I'm Kip Mailing and I'm standing for Mayor of Tasman. First of all, I'd just like to give you a bit of my background. I spent 24 years in the police and 12 years orcharding, and I returned to Tasman to live some 18 years ago because I had an elderly father that we wanted to be close to. I'm standing for Mayor because I want to make a difference to our district. I'm concerned about what is happening with our current council. They're not focused on core services. They've also increased staff hugely over the last 9 years. What's happened in Mapua with an overspend of $500,000 and $1.8 million on a commercial building is not core services and should not have been done. There are plenty of developers in Nelson and Tasman that would have built that building and not involved ratepayers' money. It's an indictment on this council that we can't fix stormwater in Motueka and flooding issues in Murchison, and we're spending $1.8 million on a commercial building. That should not happen. So I want to see a council that is focused on core services. Rates affordability is another issue, and the increase in staffing has caused part of this problem. Rates should not go up above inflation, and in the last 9 years they've gone up above inflation every year. This year they went up 1%, inflation is running at 0.4. The next subject I want to discuss is our environment. I'm a keen trout fisherman and I also go sea fishing. We need jobs and we need to improve our environment as well, and that means protecting our waterways and ensuring that we're not damaging our environment with our development. I also support the Lee Valley Dam. I have been involved in irrigation for a number of years, and if we don't build this dam soon, we will lose funding from government. They are looking at putting in a considerable sum of money to help irrigators fund this project, and it will also provide water for Richmond. Without the dam, we have 1,000 jobs at risk on the Waimea Plains. That will affect our economy hugely and our district. And the last subject I'd like to really talk with you this morning is the Southern Link. It is increasingly difficult to get in and out of Nelson from Tasman. When I came to Nelson as a 10-year-old 50 years ago, there was talk of the Southern Link then. Our population has increased hugely, and it can now take an hour to get from Nelson City to the other side of Richmond. We need to improve the flow of and volume of traffic from our key infrastructure areas, the port. The one way to do that is with the Southern Link. So I won't have met all you people. We have a difficult district to get around, but I've spent time in Murchison in the last few days. I've also been at Lake Rotoiti. I go to Motueka, I've been to Golden Bay, and over the next few weeks I'll be visiting every district and every township that I can, and I would seek your support to bring the Tasman district back into focus on core services, affordability of rates, improving our environment, and the Southern Link. Thank you for listening to me.